Yo, what is going on, guys? J.Yumeko here, and today we're back with some more Root Double Before Crime After Days Extended Edition. So, last time that we left off, well, yeah, so a lot of stuff happened actually. So apparently we knew that there was this organization called Q. They were a terrorist organization. And it's kind of now hinting at they were the ones behind whatever happened at the at Labo. So we are currently being chased down. Us, Salyu, and Misha, or whatever her name is. We're being chased down by the city security department. We've been dodging cameras and shit and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We ended up hiding out in a karaoke lounge. And we're kind of like resting there for the time being. So, you know, we had to sneak out of the house, and we ran through the park and did all kinds of crazy stuff. And so that's what's going on right now. So my thinking is that we're about to somehow get in contact with Anna, and this is the point in time where we're going to tell her about, oh, there's this organization, they're planning something big. Maybe by the time we talk to her, we'll get the idea, oh, something's going to go down at Labo, we think. At which point we know we know what's going to happen. Anna's going to be like, oh, no, it's, you know, don't worry about it. Just leave it to the adults, something along those lines. And then somehow, some way, we're all going to end up at Labo. And then, boom, whatever attack happens, whatever accident happens, not 100% sure on that, and then things kind of ride out from there. So we may not necessarily finish the game, or this route today, but I am thinking we are coming up on the end of this route. I'm thinking that. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump right on back into it. Natsuhiko recalled that long day in just a moment's time. He recalled the collapse of his calm daily life, as well as how he plunged into the maelstrom of an incident with Mashiro and Salyu. That's right. No matter how far away I am from Yuri, I must fulfill my promise to her. But Yuri ended up getting dragged into the accident regardless, and now she stood with Mashiro in front of him. Jesus Christ. Oh my god, help me. Okay, oh my god. Okay, let me lock in. The passageway was blocked by fire on both sides, leaving nowhere to escape. But regardless...
Hikori, よく考えて。今進むべき道を。
Those words fanned the fire burning in Natsuhiko's heart. She's right. No matter what the danger, I'll take the correct path. Or else I have no hope of overcoming the past. Natsuhiko grabbed Mashiro by the hand.
諦めるな。行くぞ、マシロ。
どこに？
別の道を使うんだ。第5エリアに続く道はここだけじゃない。
Natsuhiko recalled the map he'd just seen.
ここは第4エリア外周島と第5エリア外周島をつなぐ道だ。こっちの道がダメでも内周島の道は生きているかもしれない。
それじゃあ第4エリア内周島に行くことができれば。
ああ、もう一度第4エリアの炎を突っ切り内周島から第5エリアに入ろう。ここでじっとしているよりは生き残れる可能性が高い。
I mean, for me, as far as this little group is concerned, you know, forget what Salyu and Yuri and Natsuhiko are about to go through. How the fuck did Mashiro end up separated from the group, like, bleeding out? Because we know that's how she was left at the end of Route A. So, I guess we'll see. But Mashiro looks a little bewildered, but she replied strongly soon enough. Yuri smiled as if she were watching over the two of them.
よし、行こう、二人とも。
Natsuhiko took him by the hand and opened the gate on the Area 4 side. And once again, they plunged into the blazing Area 4 outer ring. Natsuhiko gripped the girl's hand tight.
二人とも最初から目をつむっとけ。そして僕の手を絶対離すな。 僕についてくれば絶対逃げられる。
わかったよ。ヒコリ、気をつけてね。
Natsuhiko nodded and ran, leading them by the hand. Mashido's gait was a little uncertain, though, perhaps because of fear. However, Yuri was surprisingly calm and matched Natsuhiko's pace perfectly. As a result, Natsuhiko wasn't too heavily burdened, and they were able to run confidently, but eventually the smoke got to Natsuhiko's eyes, blurring them over with tears. Endure it! If I stop here, Mashido and Yuri are as good as dead. Natsuhiko desperately ran despite his blurred vision, and they slipped through the connecting passageway, finding refuge in Area 4's inner ring. And unlike the outer ring, the inner ring had no signs of fire.
助かった。もう大丈夫だぞ、二人とも。
The girl spoke as Natsuhiko took deep breaths.
ありがとう、夏彦。危ないところだったね。
Yuri. See, like, I went from the Yuri is dead theory to just... I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I still think it's completely fucking impossible. But it could also be that she is also just a super powerful telepath that we never knew about. I mean, I have to imagine there's going to be a route that's dedicated to showing, like, explaining who or what Yuri is. Anyways.
ああ、でもまだ完全には安心できない。第5エリアに行くまでは。
Mashido's face froze at Natsuhiko's words.
そうだね。こっちの連絡通路は無事かな。無事でありますように。
Oh fuck. They prayed as they walked into the connecting passageway, but they didn't see any sign of fire or smoke in the path.
行ける。
やった、早く第5エリアへ。
The three of them rushed off in high spirits. Once they entered Area 5's inner ring, they headed for the emergency staircase. The broadcast said that the staircase in Areas 5 and 6 were safe. Quite some time had passed since then, but please still be safe. They rushed to the staircase with that hope in mind. Oof. But what waited for them behind the door was only the wreckage of what was once a staircase.
そんな、ここもダメなの？まさか、もう全部の階段が。
The three of them left the staircase landing with drooping shoulders. Natsuhiko suddenly got worried about Salyu. After pondering for a second, he sent her telepathy.
サリュー、聞こえるか？今どこにいる？
And after a little while, he learned about her whereabouts.
二人ともいいニュースだ。
Huh, so I guess by this point he's somewhat got a grasp on his telepathy.
今サリュと BC で連絡したら、あいつはもう第6エリアから脱出したってさ。本当に？僕らも諦めちゃダメだ。非常階段はまだ他にもある。第5エリア外周島や第6エリアにもあるんだ。あと3つのうちどれかが無事なら。
じゃあ外周島に行く？
いや、連絡通路の火星を見る限り、第5エリア外周島は炎上している可能性が高い。第6エリアから先に行ってみて。
The moment Natsuhiko began to speak, an ominous siren suddenly bellowed.
耳が痛いよ。
It was a loud alarm unlike what they'd heard before. An automatic broadcast voice followed.
ただいま、KSN が発生しました。緊急事態につき、セキュリティを封鎖モードに移行。施設内の全ゲートを閉鎖。ロック。施設内の職員は AD を投与の後、最寄りの部屋に入り、動かないでください。
Natsuhiko looked toward the connecting passageway in shock. The security gate in their path shut with a
ま
roar.
ずい。
Natsuhiko rushed over to the gate and tried opening it. But no matter how much strength he used, no matter how much he pressed the button, the gate wouldn't budge one bit.
しまった。
これどういうこと？
なんだか知らないけど、避難モードが終わったらしい。今まで開放されていたゲートも全部ロックされた。
じゃあ
僕らはこの塔に閉じ込められちまったんだ。
Natsuhiko muttered in a grave voice. What do we do? The broadcast said that all the gates were locked. That probably included the gate to the outer ring and the gate to Area 4 as well. Damn it! Is there no way out? Natsuhiko looked around with that thought in mind. upon which a look of astonishment rose up on Yuri's face.
信じられない。またこんなことが起こるなんて、まるで9年前の再現だね。
9年前の
Yuri's words jogged Natsuhiko's memory the moment they left their lips. 9 years ago, they'd also been locked here in Area 5. That's right. Back then we heard the same announcement. The gates had been shut. The image of Yuri sobbing rose up in the back of Natsuhiko's head. What happened to us after that? But the more he tried to remember the details, the worse his head ached. That was the very fragment of the past he'd been avoiding, the memory that had haunted him for a whole 9 years. Why is this happening again? Natsuhiko endured his headache and looked towards Yuri. If it's hurting me this much, then Yuri must be... A painful look was indeed on her face, but even so, she smiled at him.
私は大丈夫だよ、ヒコリン。
でもユーリ僕は何も成長してなかった。ここに来て同じように閉じ込められて結局過去を乗り越えることなんて。
As Natsuhiko vocalized his bitter regrets, Yuri gently replied.
そう思うのはまだ早いよ。ヒコリンは今日までに過去を乗り越える強さを手に入れたはずでしょ。アシロンたちとならどんな時も平気だったよね。あの日突きつけられた真実と悪意、それを乗り越えられたんだから、今回もきっと乗り越えられるはずだよ。
That day? Which day? As Natsuhiko mulled over Yuri's confusing choice of words, he heard the sound of his watch ticking. When he looked at the dial, the hands were pointing. At 9:15, at 7:08 a.m. Yesterday, huh? The day we got close to the truth. Yuri whispered to the pensive Natsuhiko.
ヒコリン、思い出す時が来たんだよ。ここに来たのはきっとただの偶然じゃない。ねえ、覚悟はいい？
Yes, Yuri, I am prepared. The moment Yuri said that, Natsuhiko's consciousness returned to yesterday. Here we go! Here we go! Natsuhiko Tenkawa's determination. So in theory, this is the last flashback segment. Natsuhiko woke up. His vision and consciousness were still blurry. Where am I? His unfamiliar surroundings had him on the verge of confused panic, but... That's right. Last night I called Yuri on the phone, and then I returned to the karaoke box. I guess I passed out from exhaustion right after that. September 15th. One day until the incident. After a moment, his thoughts managed to clear themselves again. How are the other two? Natsuhiko turned his head to look for Mashiro, only to find her face right beside him. She's too close! She looks way too defenseless. He only barely kept himself from shouting in surprise. Just afterward, Mashiro opened her eyes ever so slightly. Her eyes were fixing on Natsuhiko in an enraptured gaze. The sight of her awakening was so enthralling it left him speechless. Alright, buddy, calm down. It was a side of his childhood friend that he'd never seen before. But after only a moment passed, she returned to the usual Mashiro.
ごめん。
Natsuhiko jumped away reflexively, and suddenly felt himself step on something soft. Looking down, he found Sayu sleeping on the floor. He had accidentally stepped on her. She seemed to be sleeping peacefully, but... Not a moment later, Sayu grabbed his foot and flung him away in a flash. Natsuhiko's world turned upside down as he toppled onto the floor.
えちちち
Natsuhiko.
As part of her reactive throwing motion, Sallyu had risen to her feet. She appeared to have come back to her senses as she lent him her hand.
ごめん。寝込みを襲われたと思い、反射的に三宮スクリューを繰り出してしまった。
三宮スクリュー
Natsuhiko groaned as he got up. His knees and back ached. So she can use more than just Aikido? That was not an Aikido technique, no matter how much he looked at it. Mashiro rubbed her half-asleep eyes as she asked about it too.
それってサリュのオリジナル必殺技？そう。私があまたの格闘技をミックスして生み出した総合武術、三宮流サバットの技。他にも三宮スリーパー、三宮ロケット、三宮スープレックスなどがある。
そうなんだ。
どう考えてもサバットの技ではないし、どっかで聞いたような技名が多い気がするね。というかそんなことはどうでもいい。それより今何
I'm
時？
surprised we didn't get kicked out. Natsuhiko checked his watch.
7時12分か。
It was relatively early for a Sunday morning, but they had business to take care of that day. Natsuhiko took a deep breath before speaking.
さて、今日から本格的にテロリストの捜索を始めよう。
おうさ、こっちはいつでも OK だよ。ここに長居するのも良くない。指針を決めて
Surely when they checked us in, they were like, oh yeah, you've got like a time limit. Well, you know, actually, I take that back. A lot of these like cafes and stuff in Japan, you can quite literally live in. Like, I've read articles and seen like documentaries and stuff where people quite literally live in like gaming cafes. So, that's not really too surprising.
よし。じゃあ考えようか。僕らのやるべきことは何だ？
決まってる。最終目標はテロを阻止すること。そのためにできれば保安課の疑いを晴らすこと。保安課の疑いを晴らすためには例の警備員を見つけて虚偽の通報した旨を認めさせるべきだと
See,
思う。
I think that security guard is one of the terrorists. I mean, maybe I'm just being like digging into this way too deeply, but
確かに。
after Natsuhiko nodded in consent, Mashiro was next to speak.
ああ、私からも提案があります。
なんだ、マシロ。
それと同時進行でバスの中で会ったあの人を探すべきじゃないかな。前にも言ったけど、あの人がサングラスで顔を隠していたとはいえ、会えばわかると思うんだ。偶然でもそれを見つけることができたら即踏んじばって警察に突き出せばいいんだよ。
難しそうだけど。
それにテロリストなら仲間がいるのが自然。一人捕まえたところでテロの阻止にはならないと思う。でもさ、とりあえず保安課が私たちを疑うのをやめてくれるだろうし、警察もさすがに動くじゃん。なるほど。確かにメリットは大きい。でしょ？
Natsuhiko more or less agreed with that opinion, but
でもそれはちょっと偶然に頼りすぎだな。先に大人の協力を得るのが重要じゃないか？
保安課にあれだけ疑われてるのに。
いや、だからこそだよ。信頼できる大人を味方につけたい。
boom! Did I call it? Did I call it? An adult we can trust. Huh, I wonder if the adult we can trust is a older, mature, sexy, beautiful, big-breasted, big-bosomed, big buttocks woman, where her name just happens, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, just happens to include an E, happens to include an N, and happens to include an A. I don't know, maybe I just came to my mind, right? That's what,
保安課の誤解を解いてくれるかもしれないし、いざという時頼りになると思う。
It would have been a different story if Natsuhiko were the only one at risk for danger, but he wanted to ensure Mashiro and Sallyu were as safe as possible.
心当たりは2人いる。1人は浮田のおじさん、もう1人は椿山先生だ。
その2人なら話を聞いてくれそうだね。誰が信用できるか私には判断しがたいけど。
いや、信用できるかどうかは
Because she's an
マシロに判
empath.
断してもらいたいと思う。
私に？どういうこと？
Natsuhiko meekly responded to Mashiro's puzzled glance.
マシロ、 エンパシー使えるよな。
うん。
Now use it.
エンパシーが使えるかどうかはその相手が心を開いているかどうかで決まるんだろう。だったらおかしな言動をする人や怪しい人間がいたらとりあえずエンパシーが使えるかどうか試してみてくれないか。
でもそれは。
Mashido's expression clouded over. She's probably reluctant to peek into other people's minds. I know a lot of people hate having their minds peeped into, but I guess it goes both ways, huh? When Mashido first became able to use empathy and she tried peeking into someone's mind to make sure, perhaps it left her with a bad experience. From an objective viewpoint, Mashido had quite attractive looks, and she was even popular among the boys at school. There must have been at least a few men who harbored a certain kind of lust toward her as well. If she came face to face with the bare monstrosity of a man's mind, then it's only natural to leave a bad memory. That could be why she prohibited herself from peeking into other people's minds. Natsuhiko realized how unreasonable he was being with his request. See, if you peeked into my mind, if I was in this universe and you peeked into my mind, you would see that I would just be like barking and woofing over Anna. Like, that's all you would see. Just no thoughts. Just that.
こんなこと無理は言えないもんな。
いや、大丈夫だよ。今回の一件、言い出しっぺは私だもんね。重要そうな局面なら金を破ってやってみるよ。
That answer only made Natsuhiko feel more guilty.
悪いな、マシロ。
いいよいいよ、緊急事態だもん。せっかくの能力、たまには有効活用しないとね。
Mashido spoke in a bright voice. Even if it were mere bravado, it provided relief to Natsuhiko and Salia.
よし、やるべきことは決まりだな。
保安課の疑いを晴らす、テロ組織のメンバーを探す、大人の協力を募る。
それも監視カメラや保安課に気をつけながらな。
それでもやらなきゃならないってのが正義の味方の辛いとこだね。覚悟はいい？私はできてるよ。
ああ、厳しい条件かもしれないけど、なんとかやってみようじゃないか。
力を合わせて頑張ろう。
The three of them nodded at each other and Natsuhiko spoke.
よし、それじゃあ早速動き出そう。
了解。
And with that, the three of them exchanged firm handshakes. Not a fist bump, not a hug, or like an hey, oh, but no, firm handshakes. I like that. It's very professional. Policeman's job. After a quick breakfast, they left the karaoke box. But right as they were about to walk out into town,
待って。
Salia held back Natsuhiko and Mashido from walking any further.
どうした？
そこに警官がいる。
They looked, and sure enough, there were two officers standing at the corner.
でもそれがどうしたの？警察は敵じゃないよ。それでも用心すべき。様子見に警官の会話を聞こう。
ああ。
As Salia suggested, they hid by the entrance and strained their ears, upon which Natsuhiko heard the officers' conversation.
しかし、ここのところケーラ多すぎませんか？こんなに歩き回って意味があるんですかね？
The younger officer grumbled. The older officer replied.
意味はあるさ。我々が見回ること自体がそもそも犯罪者への牽制になるんだよ。
でも、こんな平和な街にテロリストがいるとか言われてもピンときませんよ。
だが、いよいよ市役所にも脅迫状が届いたらしいからな。警戒を怠るわけにはいかん。市内の主だった BC 関連施設はうちや保安課が張っているが、念には念を入れてだ。
Mashido whispered as they listened in on the conversation.
その脅迫状も陽動だよね。
Q のせいで街全体がピリピリしてるんだ。
戒厳令って感じだね。でもとりあえず警官は私たちを追ってはいない模様。それに警官や保安課が別件で忙しいなら私たちの追尾の手は少しは緩むはず。
そうか、それはありがたいな。
The kids waited for the officers to leave before heading out into the street.
さてどうしようかな。早速聴診券に行く？
いや、あそこは遠すぎる。とりあえず手近なところから当たろう。
手近なところって？
僕んちのお隣さん、つまり浮田のおじさんの家だよ。
And thus, they walked towards Ukida's house. Ukida's house was about a 30-minute walk from the center street, but they needed to avoid any street surveillance cameras. so the 30-minute distance took over an hour to clear.
やっと着いた。
Mashiro took a deep breath, finally relieved from all the tension of having to avoid notice.
さておじさんは
Natsuhiko pressed the doorbell as he spoke. However, there was no response no matter how many times he pressed the button.
あれ、いないみたいだね。こんな朝早くからどこへ？
At work?
仕事かな
Yeah, like what? Where would the scientists be this early in the morning? I don't know, in the lab? Ukido was a labo researcher. He may have been too busy at work to have gone home last night.
早速当てが外れちゃったな。
仕方ないよ。それじゃあ次は。
An angry shout interrupted Mashiro.
夏彦
Oh? They turned around in shock to see a woman in a lab coat standing in front of the house next door. It was a face they hadn't seen in days. Natsuhiko's mother, Dr. Miyoko Tenkawa. Crap! The professor briskly walked towards them as Natsuhiko silently cursed his unexpected turn of events.
昨夜保安課から連絡を受けたわ。
なんだそれで戻ってきたのか。
当たり前でしょう。息子がそんなことをしたなんて予想もしなかったもの。ユイ、あなたがついていながら一体何をやっているの？
ごめんなさい。
ましろちゃんもよ。あなたも一緒にいたんですって？
すみません。でも
Natsuhiko glared back at the professor as she scolded them.
ちょっと待てよ母さん。二人は関係ないだろ。というかこれは僕らの問題だ。母さんはそもそも関係ない。
関係ない？大ありよ。この忙しい時に引っ張り出されるなんて。
The professor sighed deeply.
お願いだから余計な問題を増やさないで。今仕事が過去最大に忙しいの。
Something snapped inside Natsuhiko. The professor's son and his friends were being pursued on the pretext of a false charge, and yet she wouldn't listen to any of it. And to top it all off, she was still trying to focus on work.
わかったよ母さん。迷惑かけて悪かった。すぐラボに戻って仕事したらいいよ。
そんなことできるわけないでしょう。
できるわけない。やればいいだろ。こんな時にまで仕事って言うくらいなら。
Oh shit, he's going in. He felt something murmuring in his heart as he spoke. He knew he sounded like a spoiled child, but he couldn't stop the words from leaving his lips.
僕らが追われているのは無実の罪を着せられたからだ。こっちにも非はあるけど、警備員が嘘の通報をしたんだよ。
え？
それに僕らは悪いことをしているわけじゃない。この
テロリスト？何の話をしているの？
そういう可能性があるんだよ。だから僕らなりにテロを阻止しようと思って。
阻止？バカなことを言わないで。
The professor raised her voice sharply.
わけのわからないことを言ってないで。家でおとなしくしていなさい。
いや、これは僕の意思だ。おとなしくなんてしていられない。
何か不満なことでもあるの？生活に不自由はさせてないはずでしょ。
そりゃ母さんには金銭的に世話になってるけど、僕の行動についてまであれこれ言われたくない。だいたい家に帰っても来ない親の言うことなんてはいはい聞けるわけないだろ。
Oh! Alright, Natsuhiko, go on, brother. Go on, brother man. The professor's face froze over at those words.
夏彦やめなよ。それは言い過ぎ。
Mashiro and Salyu, with all due respect, Mashiro and Salyu, you guys have absolutely no fucking, like, you have, as one of my favorite YouTubers have said, you have no beef in this stew. Back off. But that was something Natsuhiko had always wanted to tell his mother. He couldn't stop the words he'd been holding back all this time.
両親を亡くしたユーリを母さんは引き取ったな。それはすごく立派だと思うよ。だけど母さんはちゃんとユーリの親代わりになったかい？今さら昔のことは言いたくないけど、母さんは仕事ばかりで家のことを顧みなかったじゃないか。
それは
小さい頃の僕とユーリが誰も帰ってこないあの家でどれだけ寂しい思いをしたと思う？心に傷を負ったユーリを僕がどんな思いで見続けてきたと思うんだよ。
Damn. God damn.
もちろんユーリに全く非はないよ。母さんにも女手一つで家計を支えてくれたことには本当に感謝してる。だから今まで言わなかったんだ。でも今回ばかりは。
Just then, a weak smack rang out against Natsuhiko's cheek. It was the frail slap of his mother's palm against his cheek.
初めて殴られたよ。そういうところは案外親らしい。
Natsuhiko made it that far before gasping, for he saw tears welling up in the professor's eyes.
私はあなたのためを思ってあなたのために頑張ってるのに。
夏彦博士を泣かした。ひどい。謝った方が。
Hell nah! Listen, I get the whole thing of, oh, you know, I wasn't there for you, but it's because I was out working for you to make sure you could go to the best school and live the best life and do this and that. But I do have to say, what does all that mean when you're not there for your child, you know? Like, I get it, right? I get it if, you know, obviously, hey, my child is without their father, and then I've, you know, ended up basically adopting this other child whose parents are dead, and so I want to make sure I can provide for them. But part of providing for them, like providing for a child, is not just a financial thing. It's also very much an emotional thing as well. You have to be there for the child. You know, you can't just say, oh well, you know, I threw some money their way, that's good enough. You have to be there physically and emotionally for your child to be there for them as they grow up, to congratulate them, to scold them and direct them. So I get that it's like, oh, you know, I've sacrificed so much for you and yada yada, but that's really no excuse for being an absent parent, in my opinion. So I'm completely with Natsuhiko here. Bitter regret filled his heart as the girls admonished him, but what felt stronger than his regret was his confusion. It was all for me? I never asked for this. So why? Why are you crying? What's with that timing? He couldn't understand his mother's feelings. Dr. Tenkawa continued in a low voice.
夏彦、お願いだから。今はおとなしくしていて。私はすぐラボに戻らなければならないのだけど。後で話はゆっくり聞くから。
今はどういう意味だよ、母さん。何か言いたいことがあるのか？
いいえ。
今回の一件と何か関係があるのか？
何もないわ。いつか話せる時が来ればとは思うけど。
The professor spoke insinuative words. Natsuhiko wanted to know what was on her mind. He wanted to know from the bottom of his heart for the very first time. Mom, what are you trying to say? As that thought crossed his mind, oh. His five senses suddenly faded into the distance. His vision blurred, his hearing diminished, and instead, voices echoed in Natsuhiko's brain.
やはり私は
Oh shit, we got empathy, baby!
仕事がすべて終わるまでいっそ会わない方が。
Natsuhiko was shocked. The sensation was quite similar to receiving telepathy, but not entirely. He heard a voice directly echoing in his head, but Natsuhiko had heard Dr. Tenkawa's mental voice. This is empathy? As Natsuhiko had that thought, his five senses returned.
夏彦
He snapped back when he heard Mashiro's voice up against his ear.
どうした？
誰かこっちに来る。
He turned around in shock to see two men running their direction from the other side of the street. They were the security department members who were standing in front of Mashiro's house yesterday. Damn it, did they see us already? He was concerned about the meaning of his mother's tears and if he had just used empathy, but
逃げよう。
Natsuhiko quickly shouted that command. And with just a moment of hesitation, Mashiro Nasayu nodded.
ごめんなさい博士。私たち行きます。博士、夏彦は私が守る。心配は無用。
And with that, the three of them ran away, leaving behind Dr. Tenkawa hanging her head in shame.
走れ、二人とも走れ。
She'd have to have like a really goddamn good reason for all of that, you know? Because again, I'm personally, and listen, I'm not a parent, right? But I do feel like sometimes people with an outside perspective, again, with no risk in the game, can have very valid opinions. But it's like, I feel like, yeah, like, sure, you can really love your child, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at parenting them, right? There's plenty of parents out there who love their children to hell and back, but who go about actually raising them the completely wrong way, you know? So while parenting is not like a cut and dry thing, I definitely think that in this situation, it'd be kind of hard to defend her or to justify her absence in his life and his and Duty's lives with just, oh, well, I was working on a super important project for, yada, yada, yada. Now, granted, if it was a thing of like, oh, yeah, this was a project to like save humanity, I could understand that. I still think it's like, okay, yeah, but you're still a bad parent, but I can at least, respect that in the meantime you were doing something really important for the betterment of everybody. But, that's my 2 cents anyways. Natsuhiko frantically ran, urging the girls to do so as well.
とにかく人気のない方に逃げよう。人混みの中では誰が保安官員か識別しにくくなる。
In accordance with Sally's suggestion, they ran away from the urban areas. The situation was different from their escape last night. They'd taken advantage of the cover of the dark, but this time it was a challenge of purely stamina and agility. Sally assumed she had more than enough stamina, but Mashido's rough breathing was loud and clear. Her stamina could give out at any moment. Natsuhiko took Mashido by the hand, and right when they thought they'd finally shaken off the men, a car appeared in their path. Rokame City's emblem was painted on the side.
また保安官。
二人ともこっちだ。
Natsuhiko detoured into a side street. They continued into a narrow, unpaved road that seemed inaccessible to cars.
まずいぞ。このままじゃいつか追いつかれる。
どこか隠れる場所はない？わかんないよ。
Mashido cried bitterly. Her voice sounded so pained. Mashido was by no means fast on her feet, and her physical strength was subpar at best. Damn it. At this rate, Mashido's gonna... The security department's presence was gone for now, but by no means did that mean they could stop. They ran at random through narrow streets so as to make themselves harder to track.
待って。もうダメ。
Mashido finally threw in the towel. But that very moment, beyond the grass lining the side of the road, they saw an old abandoned building.
あれだ。あそこに隠れよう。
The kids stumbled into the building. It was a dark, empty place. Hey, yo, is this the hangar from If My Heart Had Wings? Same universe confirmed? Despite its considerable size, there was no sign of anybody inside. The kids took a deep breath.
ここなら少しは奴らの目もごまかせるかな。
I'm honestly surprised that they didn't end up going back and hiding in the abandoned hospital.
可能性は高い。入るとき確認したけど、入り口の付近には監視カメラはなかった。
I know you're gonna swallow she to go. Oh shit.
よかった。正直やばかった。
Mashido spoke as she caught her breath. She seemed to have finally recovered. She took a look around and suddenly opened her eyes as if she'd noticed something.
あれ？ここって。
どうした？
いや、ここ秘密基地じゃない？
え？あ、本当だ。
Now that she mentioned it, it was. It was the abandoned factory that Natsuhiko and the other children played in, their so-called secret base.
変わらないな。あの頃のままだ。
このくらい大きいと壊すのもお金かかるからね。
ちょうどいい。買って知ったる基地だし、ちょっとここで休んでいこう。
例によってほとぼりが冷めるのを待とうか。
They wiped off their sweat and leaned against the wall. Sayu looked a little tired too as she whispered.
それにしても保安課のせいで動き回るのが困難。
うん、厄介なのを敵に回しちゃったね。私たちが守りたいと願う町の人々が敵になるだなんて皮肉なもんだよ。
They'd always known the security department to be a reliable organization, but now they were painfully aware of just how diligent they were. Mom could have stopped those security department freaks for us. That thought reminded Natsuhiko of something. He remembered the strange voice he heard back when he saw his mother.
そうだ。二人とも聞いてくれ。
何？
実はさっき母さんと話している途中、なぜか母さんの心の声が聞こえたんだ。
心の声？
エンパシー？
わからないけど、多分。
Mashiro's eyes widened at those words.
まさか本当なの夏彦？
Nah, I'm lying, guys. I'm just fucking around.
いくらなんでも早すぎない？テレパシーだって使えるようになったばかりでしょ？
Guys, it's because I'm the GOAT. I don't think you understand. I'm the GOAT.
いや、一瞬だったけど、確かに聞こえたんだ。
ちょっと試してみてよ。今心開くか
My
ら。
heart's totally open right now.
私の心の声聞いて。
私も興味深い。ちょっと試してほしい。
ああ、わかったよ。
Natsuhiko put a finger to his brow, a trick used for empathy. He shut his eyes and tried listening to the girls' mental voices. Please tell me what you guys are thinking. But for some reason, he couldn't concentrate too well. Compared to telepathy, which only required focusing on a simple message, empathy seemed like it'd be several times more difficult for him.
どう夏彦？
私の心の声聞こえた？
Nope.
いや、やっぱりダメだ。テレパシーと同じく、本当に心底念じた時しか使えないみたいだ。
さあ。
博士の時は心の底から念じたの？
うん、まあ。急に泣かれたら。
Oh fuck, my bad. She did cry all of a sudden, so yeah.
博士、何を考えていた？
いや、普通のことを考えていたよ。
Mad and sad and stuff.
悲しい。
Nothing too crazy. Natsuhiko tried awkwardly to gloss over the details. He recalled his mother's mental voice. I knew it. He hates me. But until all the work's complete, it'd be best if I avoided him. Mom was thinking things like that? They were quite unexpected thoughts. Though that was assuming what Natsuhiko heard was actually empathy and not just an auditory hallucination.
そうだよ。錯覚かもしれない。
Why is, like, both for Watase and Natsuhiko, it's always just, well, that's just an auditory hallucination. People have that all the time. No, they don't, motherfucker. Like, it's one thing if you're in, like, a big crowd and you think that you hear somebody say your name. But to completely lose all five of your senses and then vividly hear your mother's voice, those words be spoken, come on, that's not a stretch. That's fucking just fabrication.
真城の言う通り、こんなに早くエンパシーが使えるようになるわけがないもんな。声が聞こえた気がしただけかも。母さんの固有の波形を探ったりもしなかったしさ。
そうかな。それならそれでもいいんだけど。
Mashiro appeared to be preoccupied with other things. I guess this isn't the time to be talking about this. As soon as they started the surge, they were nearly detained by the security department. And despite being the first to nearly throw in the towel, Mashiro was probably doing her best to endure. Natsuhiko thought he'd try to casually break the tension with some optimistic conversation.
それにしてもさ、真城。思い出すな。
This place brings back memories, huh? Didn't you just say that you had telepathy? Yeah, well, you know, considering I just kind of like said some horrible shit to my mom, whatever though. Okay. Well, you know, it's fine, whatever.
何を？
昔のことだよ。子供の頃はみんなよくここに集まってたもんな。
そうだね。懐かしいね。
Mashiro looked around the ruined factory with distant eyes. Eyes that were perhaps seeing images of the past.
また二人の昔話。ああ、ごめん。退屈かな。そんなことはない。私も聞きたい。
いや、大した話じゃないんだけどさ。
With that introduction, Natsuhiko began to tell a story.
当時僕らはよくここに集まって六名士の七不思議の謎を解こうって盛り上がってたんだよ。
七不思議？この町に伝わる7つの不思議な噂のこと。例えばどんなものがあるの？
そうだな。どんなんだったっけ？
Natsuhiko thought hard to remember them.
まずその1。ラボはただの原子力研究所じゃない。
Well, that one's definitely true. Fuck, I keep pressing that. They definitely do not do
そんな
nuclear
バカな。
research.
博士はそんな研究を？いや、あくまで噂だよ。根も葉もないやつ。安堵した。
でも当時は信じてたんだよな。こんな高等無形な話をさ。
Natsuhiko continued with a wry smile.
その2、旧六名市立病院の焼け跡には火災で死んだ人の幽霊が出る。
幽霊なんていない。その3、町中の監視カメラは防犯のためじゃ
I
なく
could
て
also believe that.
一般市民
Hey, we're in the middle of that right now
監視するために
with flock cameras.
それは今日に限っては高等無形とは言い難い。
その4、BC を悪用する悪のコミュニケーターと戦う正義の組織が存在する。
It's literally
通称
us.
BC 警察。彼らの正体は謎に包まれているが、その本部は六名市にある。
それは現実ではなくアニメの話では。まあまあ、今考えるとただのジョークみたいなもんだからね。
他には何があったっけ？
そうだね。とっておきのがあるよ。
Mashiro grinned broadly as she spoke to Salyu.
その5、正しいやり方を知らずに BC を使っていると、そのコミュニケーターはやがて心が壊れた怪物になってしまう。
そうだ、それだ。
That fifth wonder was one step beyond the others in terms of eeriness. Salyu's expression clouded over upon hearing it too.
怪物？怪物になるってどういうこと？実はね、これは未だ根強く支持されている噂なんだけど、 BC にはまだ分かってない未知の部分がたくさんあるっていうのは知ってるよね。うん、そりゃ当然だよね。何しろ脳の仕組み自体がそもそもよく分かっていないんだもの。なのに独学で BC を学んで間違ったやり方で訓練をしたりしてると
You get super BC.
脳におかしな負荷がかかって、それが蓄積して、やがてその人は心が壊れてしまうらしいんだよ。
Salyu's face clearly stiffened. Mashiro continued in an even more exaggerated tone.
で、心が壊れてしまったコミュニケーターは常軌を逸した BC 能力や呪いに満ちたテレパシーを使って周囲の人に狂気を振りまく怪物になる。だからそれを防ぐためにも六名学園のようなコミュニケーター専用学校が作られたんだよ。
Bruh. Salyu jolted back in fear. Salyu joke back in fear. Holy fuck, I'm just all over my words. Despite her lack of fear of ghosts, it seems she could still be scared by such stories with questionable realism.
まあ、あながち嘘とは言えないかもな。その予防か知らないけど、うちの学校でも脳波検査や適正度検査、健康診断はしょっちゅうやってるし。
ならばその怪物の出現記録が残るはず。それはあるの？
ないよ。誰も見たことがない。
空見たことか。ではそれも所詮噂に過ぎない。
いや、それを保管するのが次の噂なんだな。
As Sally tilted her head, Natsuhiko thrust his finger at her and spoke up.
その6、怪物化した人は6名士保安課の隠蔽部隊によって捕まえられて市役所の地下に幽閉される。つまり怪物を誰も見たことないのは保安課が全てを隠しているからってわけさ。
See, I think that's what's going on.
そんな。
Sally's face was already pale, her voice powerless, and Natsuhiko just kept it coming.
で、七不思議のその7が。
But before he could finish, he forgot what it was.
あれ？真白、その7ってなんだっけ？
それもその後の補足みたいなやつだよ。つまりもういい。6つもあれば十分。
A flustered Sally spoke up. She apparently wasn't good with his sort of talk after all.
あらら、怖がりだね、サリュー。うるさい、真白。
まあまあ、子供らしくていいじゃないか。
うるさい、夏彦。いい加減にするべき。
Sally lightly slapped Natsuhiko and Mashiro on the cheeks.
ごめん、サリュー。
悪かった。脅かしすぎた。冗談だよ、冗談。
そうそう。こんなのただの。
Wow, what a nice heartwarming moment. Surely this doesn't end in all of us being trapped in a death-defying situation.
ならいい。でも、今度また同じ話をしたら本気で怒る。
Oh my god. This is a choice path.
いや、私たちも大人げなかったわ。
They smiled at each other, and thus, before they knew it, the heavy atmosphere had somehow abated. Mashiro sure is tough. She's already bounced back. And now that he thought about it, she was always like that. She had an indomitable will that allowed her not to shrink back when cornered, but to find enjoyment out of even the toughest of times. That's right. She was like that back then too, huh? And with that thought, he had a recollection of another childhood memory. Oh, here we go. I don't know. For me, like, this goes with anything. This goes for games, anime, TV shows, movies, books. I fucking hate flashback segments. I hate them so fucking much. It's like, I don't care, bruh. I don't care about seeing their childhood and shit. Listen, all I need to know is that they had a traumatic childhood and that him and Mashiro were friends. That's all I need to know about. That's all I care about. I don't care about anything else. That's just me. Like, that is just me. Like, I get that, you know, it's always important. It builds their character and the story and the world. But for me, I just don't care. I just don't care. It was a story that happened after they let Sirius free outside the gate. Natsuhiko and Mashiro had run away from the guard station there. And as they ran recklessly, they found themselves at a ruined factory at the edge of town before they knew it. It was a place they turned into their secret base.
Sirius を逃がせたぞ。
やったね、やったね。
Natsuhiko and Mashiro laughed out loud. What they felt most wasn't the sadness of parting with Sirius, nor the fear of getting caught by the guard, but rather the sense that they'd truly accomplished something. They had saved a life. Natsuhiko was glad and proud of himself. He had experienced some terribly mortifying memories in that ruined factory, but for that moment, he'd forgotten about them.
なあ、真白。
何、夏彦。
僕らは今までライバルだったけど、これからは正義の仲間だな。これからもこうして 町の平和を守っていこうぜ。
大切なものは誰かが守ってくれるのを待つんじゃない。自分の手で守るものなんだぞ。だね。
Mashiro smiled softly as she spoke. Natsuhiko lost his breath. Not because she had quoted him, but because Mashiro's smile looked strangely charming to him in the moonlight.
あれ、どうしたの？顔赤いよ。
いや、なんでもないよ。
Natsuhiko has a thing for Mashiro, I guess.
変なの。
Mashiro tilted her head and suddenly changed the subject.
それよりさ、
I'm not too surprised. I mean, out of everybody that I imagined he'd end up with, Mashiro's probably the one it would be.
え？何が？
このまま帰ったらきっとお母さんに怒られちゃうよ。もう夜遅くなっちゃったし。
そういえば。
He hadn't thought about it. Natsuhiko spoke the first thing that came to his mind.
だったらこのまま二人で正義の旅に出ようか。
なんかわかんないけどそれいい。やりたいやりたい。
悪いやついっぱいやっつけてさ、保健所も懲らしめてさ。
The evil healthcare center.
そうすればシリオスもこの町に戻ってこれるよね。
いつかはね。
でもそうなると敵も多いよね。そのためには仲間がもっといっぱい必要かな。
二人じゃさすがに無理か。
Their fun laughter echoed in the secret base. However, Natsuhiko knew, and Mashiro probably noticed it too, it was impossible for two children like them to go out on a journey all by themselves. But Natsuhiko chose to ignore that reality as he spoke up cheerfully.
じゃあ仕方ないから旅は今度にして、今日のところは帰ろうぜ。
残念。怒られるために帰るのか。
気にするなって。僕らは正義の任務をしたんだから、こそこそしないで堂々と帰ろう。ほら、行くぞ。
Natsuhiko took Mashiro by the hand and started to walk. For a second, Mashiro looked surprised. But she soon replied with a broad grin. As he saw her smile, Natsuhiko thought to himself, if only this journey could continue forever instead of ending when they got home. He felt like he could walk like this anywhere so long as Mashiro was with him. And that sure brings me back. And now that he thought about it, they'd hidden in this very same ruined factory. Perhaps that memory was what cheered Mashiro up.
それにしてもあの頃サリュもいたらよかったのに。そしたら一緒に遊んだり、今思い出話もできたのにね。無念。
Mashiro and Salyu cheerily talked amongst themselves. We need more allies, huh? At the very least, we've got one more now. But they were fine with just the three of them. With that thought in mind, Natsuhiko piped in with a cheerful voice.
さて、昔話はこの辺で。創作の続きにつ
We
い
need
て
to
考
get to
え
my
ようか。
lovely wife, Anna. Now. Mashiro and Salyu's faces tensed at his words.
そうだね。そろそろほとぼりも冷めてる頃だろうし。
いや、それは甘いだろう。多分奴らはこの辺をうろうろしてると思うよ。
ここなら大丈夫だけど、開けたところに出れば監視カメラもある。このままでは移動もできない。そっか。困ったね。どうする？
Natsuhiko pondered that question for a bit.
そうだな。これからは移動はすべてタクシーを使おう。街道まではなんとか出て、そこで友人タクシーを拾うんだ。そしてそのまま一日貸し切りにしてしまうのさ。保安課も僕らがそこまでするとは読んでいないだろう。
そりゃあ豪快でいいけど。
We don't got that money, man!
お金がかかるのでは？
僕だって多少は貯金がある。今がその使い時だよ。
そんな。
Dang, bro's pulling out the personal finances. I would never do that shit.
いいんだって。どうせ使い道もないんだから。
That was the money Natsuhiko had been meticulously saving up from his allowance and New Year's red envelopes ever since elementary school. His lack of hobbies meant he had no use for the money, so he had an absurd amount of savings in the bank.
確か20万円くらいあるはずだ。さすがにそれだけあればタクシーの貸し切りくらいできるだろう。
I guess it's that time of day again. Time of day to search up conversion rates. Alright, 200,000 yen to USD. All right, if I had to give like a ballpark estimate, and I have no idea what the conversion rate is, when they pick up like a snack from the store, it's always like, oh yeah, that'll be 3,000 yen, please. So I'm thinking 200,000 yen is probably going to be maybe like $5,000. Let's see. Oh, 1,200 bucks. 200,000 yen is. I completely overshot that. Oh my god. Holy fuck. That is a brutal conversion rate. 200,000 yen is only 1,200 bucks. And he's been saving this since elementary school. Well, I guess it's not too bad of a savings if he's only been getting it from like New Year's money and red envelope. Because I mean, what New Year's money? Well, let's think about it, right? So if he's been saving up since elementary, let's see, school grades in Japan. So, 12 years of core education, 6 years of elementary, 3 years of junior high school, and 3 years of high school. So that would mean if he's been saving up since elementary, 6 years of elementary school. What? Really? They do 6 years of elementary school? Holy fuck. Okay, I was about to say, well, I mean, it's kind of hard to make an estimation. Okay, he's been saving up since elementary. If I was to say, oh yeah, I've been saving up since high school, that could really mean anything, but let's just place it smack dab in the middle, right? So, in the middle of his high school years, he's been saving up. Actually, let's be even more generous. Let's say that he's been saving up since he started elementary, right? He's been saving up since elementary, so that's, what, 9 years? No, well, no, he's in high school now. I don't know what year he's in. We can probably assume he's like probably around a senior. So like 10-ish years, 10, 11 years. So let's see. Let's go back to our conversion. $1,256 divided by 12 years. So each year he would have been given roughly $104 for New Year's and red envelope money. That's a lot of money to be giving to a fucking 6-year-old, bro. That's a lot of fucking money to be giving away. But I mean, hey, if that's all he's been doing and he got $1,200 from it, okay, I can see that.
なんか夏彦がかっこよく見える。でも、
Yeah.
確かにそれは安全。
よし、だったら決まりだな。
He'd never done something as extravagant as reserving a taxi for a whole day, but now wasn't the time to mind such details.
では、うまくタクシーを捕まえられたら、次はどこへ？
そうだな。母さんは頼れないし、浮田のおじさんはいないし。
じゃあ、やっぱりここはエナ先生。
Yes.
あるいは当初の予定通り、超神経に行くのもいい。
Well, obviously here I'm going to go with my girl. Natsuko pondered which route to take, and a moment later he gave his answer.
いや、超神剣は保安課の連中が張っている可能性。先に先生のところに行こう。
Yep.
でも、エナのうちはわかる？
No.
わからないけど、もしかしたら学校に行ったら会えるかも。
Anna was such a diligent teacher that she might have still gone to work even though it was a Sunday.
よし、それじゃ決まりだな。タクシー拾って、まず学校だ。
異議なし。うん、行こう、二人とも。
And without exchange of words, the kids dashed out of the ruined factory. They ran from cover to cover and somehow managed to reach a convenience store beside the main road. For now, Natsuhiko withdrew 100,000 yen, or half of his total savings, and thus they had enough to cover their transportation costs, but the convenience store surveillance camera had likely caught Natsuhiko on film. He had covered his face with his hand, but there was still the possibility that they could track his movements through his ATM card history. I mustn't stay here longer than I need to. Gotta get out of here before the security department arrives. With that thought in mind, Natsuhiko dashed out of the convenience store.
マシロ、サリュー、 お金下ろしてきたぞ。
Machino and Sally turned around once Natsuhiko shouted. They'd been waiting by the main road and had just hailed a taxi.
ありがとう夏彦。さあ早くこっちに。
Natsuhiko nodded and rushed to the taxi.
はい、どちらまで？
As he opened the door, Natsuhiko answered the driver's question with a question of his own.
すみません。1日貸し切りってできますか？
え？貸し切り？珍しいな。こっちとしては嬉しいけど。
いくらですか？
8時間で4万5千円だね。
高いな。
でも迷っている暇はない。早く乗り込もう夏彦。
So what? He withdrew roughly $600. So that's $300 for a full day, for a full 8 hours. Let's do a quick conversion on that. So what? 1256. He took out half of it, and then he's wanting. Let's round it up, right? He wants roughly half of what he ended up taking out. So he's $314 for 8 hours. So divided by 8. Damn. So this guy's gonna end up doing a day of work that basically nets him an hourly profit of $39. Imagine working for that. For getting paid $40 an hour. That is fucking okay. This guy knows his prices. He knows what he wants. And with that, the kids piled into the car. The driver spoke in a tone of voice that was suddenly a lot more polite.
ご利用ありがとうございます。それではまずどちらへ？
6名学園まで。
かしこまりました。
Hey man, listen brother, if I'm getting paid $40 an hour, I will drive you to Saudi Arabia. All right? Hey man, that's some good money right there.
音声入力。目的地6名学園。ドライブモード自動通常。走行
Oh yeah, but they have these like fancy cars. The driver commanded the automatic driving system and the taxi nimbly took off. It's kind of funny seeing games like this where like, oh yeah, they have, you know, like, oh yeah, it's quote unquote a manned taxi, but then he's just telling the car to drive itself automatically to where it needs to go. But I mean, you have nowadays like Waymos, for example. I see Waymos all around the fucking place, and those are completely autonomous. So the gate was open even though it was a Sunday. Oh, I think I just skipped over a lot. After a little while, they arrived at the school, perhaps to let the teachers into work, to get work done on the day off, or to allow students to use the facilities or club activities. The driver moved the car in accordance with Natsuhiko's directions. And then the kids got off the taxi at the staff entrance.
運転手さん、ここで待っててください。後で戻ってきますから。
そりゃ貸し切りですから。お待ちしておりますとも。
And with that voice at their backs, they entered the school. It was the same familiar school they attended, but they made sure to be cautious as thieves. As they got inside, Salyu muttered.
それじゃあ早速エナを。
待て、サリュ。
Natsuhiko quickly stopped Salyu.
どうしたの？
耳を澄まして。あそこから聞こえる音を聞くんだ。
Natsuhiko pointed to the corner of the ceiling as he spoke, and there, he could hear the servo motors of a surveillance camera.
ここにもカメラが。
That's honestly one thing that kind of surprised me. Like, I don't know how true it is or not, because obviously, you know, but like in Japanese and Korean like TV shows or dramas where it takes place in like a high school, and of course there's always some kind of fight or some horrific bullying going on. There's never cameras in the school. Like, is it just like because obviously here in America you have cameras all over the fucking place of the school, you know, like there's barely a place in the school where there's not a camera watching you, except obviously like the bathrooms. But I mean, do Japanese and like Korean schools just not have that? Like, is that like a thing? Actually, let me search that up, because I'm honestly really curious about that. We're getting sidetracked a lot today. Do Japanese schools have security cameras? Traditional public schools in Japan do not have security cameras inside classrooms or standard hallways, but they are becoming more common at main gates, perimeter entrances, or in select private and international facilities. Huh. Interesting. Apparently, they're standard in Korean hagwons, which I actually just learned about this recently from a Korean show that I was watching. But I mean, as far as I understand, a hagwon is like a private tutoring academy. So like, you know, Japan has what they would refer to as a cram school. That's basically what a hagwon is, as far as I know. So it's like you can get some private tutoring there, or like extra lessons, remedial lessons, or whatever they are. It's good to know, I guess.
この学校には不審者の侵入防止のために監視カメラが備え付けられているんだ。
Natsuhiko normally paid them no heed, because if he let their presence get to him every day, he'd never be able to stay calm. Now that's one thing. Going to school and having cameras never bothered me. Like, obviously for me, it was like a normal thing, but I don't know. It's kind of an interesting like take on it. Like, there's people out there in the world who in their countries, the thought of having cameras in their even just their school hallways is like a weird thing. It's a weird concept. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think about the differences like that.
これじゃ職員室に行くこともできない。
まあ、でもなんとか資格をついて。
As Natsuhiko began to speak, Mashiro placed a finger to her temple.
待って二人とも。今先生にテレパシーを送るから。先生、緊急事態です。こちらは鳥羽真白です。学校内にいたら通用口のところまで来てくださいって。
Good thinking, Mashiro.
この方が動き回るより確実だよ。
なるほど。じゃあここで待とう。
And thus, they waited for a while after Mashiro sent her telepathy. And eventually, Anna appeared.
鳥羽さん、天川君に三宮さんも。
先生、よかった。
My wife! My beautiful, sexy wife!
あなたたちどうしたの？日曜日に学校に来て、しかも緊急事態って。
話せば長くなるんです。どこか監視カメラのないところで話せませんか？
Anna watched Natsuhiko's tense entreaty with a serious look on her face.
何か切羽詰まった事情があるのね。すぐそこに BC ルームがあるわ。あそこなら監視カメラもない。
They slipped stealthily into the BC room. Anna stood at her podium as usual and spoke up.
さて、聞かせてもらいましょうか。昨日からあなたたち様子が変だけど、一体何があったの？
信じてもらえるかわからないんですけど、僕たち妙な事件に巻き込まれてるんです。
それで相談したいことがあって絵の先生を探してたんですよ。
事件？相談したいこと？何の話かしら？
最初から話しますけども。
God, she is such a beautiful woman. Oh, Anna, my love. Let me sniff you, Anna. Oh. Natsuhiko retold the story of what happened since yesterday. What happened on the bus, the possibility of Q being in the city, and the reason the security department was chasing them. Though he did leave out the part about Mashiro using empathy. Once the story was done, Anna muttered.
そう。
そうですね。
先生、信じてくれますか？
ええ。生徒の言うことですもの。
See, this is why she's the goat.
信じるわよ。そして、あなたたちが純粋な正義感から行動してるってこともね。
My fucking goat. The kids were about to sound relief, but what Anna said next stopped them in their tracks.
でも、だからこそ、あなたたちはこの事件に関わるべきじゃないと思うわ。
そんな、なんでですか？
教師として生徒の身に危険が及ぶことなんて賛成できるわけないでしょ。それぐらい警戒すべき相手よ、Q という組織は。
先生は Q を知ってるんですか？
当たり前でしょ。六名学園の教師なのよ、私は。
Apparently, Mashiro and the trainer were right. It did appear to be an infamous organization. However,
だったら余計にどうして？
as Mashiro trailed off on her words, Anna spoke with an exasperated smile on her face.
そうね。それじゃ、納得してもらうためにも特別授業をしてあげましょうか。 通の授業では教えないことだけど、あなたたちは知っておいた方がいいと思うから。
特別授業ですか？
Anna nodded and quietly began to speak.
実は BC とテロリズムは切っても切り離せない関係にあるの。私は大学で超心理学を学ぶ中で BC の真の歴史についても当然習ったわ。コミュニケーターが現れて、それから社会がどう変異していったか、その極めて不安定で危険に満ちた歴史をね。
危険に満ちた歴史。
16年前を境にコミュニケーターが大発生したのは知ってるわね。でも当時の社会がそれを簡単に受け入れられたと思う？
それは受け入れられたんじゃないですか？
そうですよ。当時のコミュニケーターは能力も高くなかっただろうし、ちょっとテレパシーが使える人くらいの認識で。
使える側はその程度に考えるわね。でも使えない側もそう思うとは限らないのよ。
Anna frowned as she spoke.
最初にコミュニケーターに対し激しい拒否反応を示したのはごく一部の人間だけだった。2014年2月、フランスの事件よ。コミュニケーターが住んでいた村にある妄想に取りつかれた男たちが放火したの。
放火？
ひどい。どうして？
犯人たち曰く、コミュニケーターは悪霊に取りつかれた悪しき存在だからとのことよ。
悪霊？どういう意味？
聖書にこんなエピソードがあるらしいの。ガラリアの湖のほとりに悪霊に取りつかれた男がいた。彼はしばしば悪霊の声を聞き、墓場に佇み苦しんでいた。男に名を問うと彼はこう答えた。我が名はレギオン。我らは多数であるがゆえに。その悪霊はやがて男の体から追い出されたが、代わりにそばにいた豚の群れに取り付いた。すると豚たちは狂ったように走り出し、次々に湖に落ちて溺れ死んだ。
何なんですか、その不気味なエピソードは。
Never heard that one before.
わからないわ。このエピソードが何を意味しているのかはずっと宗教論者の議論のだけど、その犯人たちはこう考えたのよ。
The impure spirits were possessing the communicators and yada yada
コミュ
yada.
ニケーターは我々の聞けない声を聞く。それは悪霊の声だ。彼らは悪霊に取りつかれた悪しき存在なのだ。故に神罰を下さねばならない。
そんな。
狂ってる。
そうね。私もそう思うわ。当然その犯人たちは罰せられ、幸いにして死傷者も出なかったため、事件はすぐに忘れ去られた。でも後から考えればこれが始まりだったの。コミュニケーターと一般人の対立構造のね。
Oops. Anna's expression remained unchanged, but her voice gradually grew more stern.
コミュニケーターがコミュニケーターであるという理由で普通の人々に狙われる。そうした事例はその後も頻発したわ。同年4月にはアメリカのブルックリンでコミュニケーター
Holy
の青年が
fuck!
リンチされて
A young American communicator was lynched in Brooklyn. Listen, I know us Americans have kind of a complicated relationship with lynching. But come on. No way would somebody be lynched in Brooklyn. Like, that's a bit much.
その翌月には中国で集合住宅が丸ごと焼失したわ。6月にはドイツで、7月にはイタリアとアメリカで、8月にはドイツとフランスとオーストリアで、9月にはロシアとフランスとアメリカと中国で。同様の事件は枚挙にいとまがなかった。知ってる？ この町でも起きたのよ。6名士同時多発火災という事件が。
それ知ってます。
そう。偉いわ鳥羽さん。今ではあまり語られることもない事件だもの
Dang,
ね。
we done strung up a communicator in Brooklyn. Anna spoke with a smile, but it was a smile tinged with sadness.
コミュニケーターがごく少数で BC がオカルトの範疇に収まっている時代にはこんなもん。それまでにもコミュニケーターはいたと思うけど、せいぜい新興宗教の教祖様になるかテレビタレントにでもなるか。そしてほとんどは己の能力を隠してひっそりと生きていったんでしょう。でもコミュニケーターが次々に現れ急速に数を増やすようになってから事態は一気に深刻化したの。まるで突如生まれた新人類が旧人類を脅かそうとしていると考える人が少なからずいたのね。 BC が努力で身につけられるものならよかったのだけど BC の適性は遺伝子によって生まれつき決まってしまうから。
Damn it, I keep skipping shit. Anna trailed off at that, allowing silence to fill the classroom. Even though the room temperature wasn't that cold, Natsuko felt his spine chill. A strange fear sank into his heart. Anna continued.
その対立意識はやがて恐怖に変わり、恐怖はテロリズムを生んだ。テロの語源はテラー、つまり恐怖だもの。人がテロという手段を選択するのは他者に恐怖を感じたとき、他者に恐怖を与えるとき。悲しいけれど必然的な流れよ。
信じられない。
だって今は平和じゃないですか。
その平和を作り上げるため各国は並々ならぬ努力をしたのよ。当然この日本もね。6名士同時多発火災の2年後にはコミュニケーターの保護を目的とした BC 法を制定。それと同時にこの6名士をはじめとしたコミュニケーター保護特区政令指定機密都市を国内6カ所に設立。そして全国のコミュニケーターを政令指定機密都市に移住させたのよ。
移住させたって強制的にですか？
いえ、あくまで任意よ。でも地方に住んでいるコミュニケーターたちは政府からしつこく移住の勧告を受けることになったわ。もちろん移住のための資金は全額支払われるし、場合によっては職業、住居の紹介から高額の準備金まで支給されるの。
どうしてそこまでして？
すべては公共の治安のため。コミュニケーターと一般人の対立を激化させないためよ。急務となったのはコミュニケーターは皆政令指定機密都市に住んでいるという常識を構築すること。そうして住み分けがなされていれば一般人の皆さんも平穏な気持ちでいられるもの。その移行はごくスムーズに行われ、圧力も最小限に抑えられたわ。おかげで
Fuck. And so, with all its communicators gathered in one spot, Japan was able to get its BC research organized for undisturbed progression, and thus became an advanced BC nation.
つまりこの町はただの研究学園都市なんかじゃない。あなたたちコミュニケーターを守るために国家が作り上げた砦なのよ。
When he heard the story to its end, Natsuhiko finally understood the truth behind this town. Why this town had such strong public order. Why the city was so vigilant against criminal activity to the point of installing surveillance cameras in city gates. He heard that it was all to protect the local research facilities from industrial espionage, but were they actually trying to protect the communicators? No, the public order of society itself. and it continued as the kids were left speechless.
だけど社会のシステムが強固になればテロリストも狡猾になっていく。そして Q はその中で最も狡猾で執念深い組織なのよ。知ってるかもしれないけど過去に何度もテロを成功させている。今まで政令指定機密都市を狙った例はないけれど、あなたたちの話も冗談とは到底思えないわね。
Anna quietly sighed. It appeared that the reason she honestly believed this story was because it was a possibility she'd feared from the start.
Q という組織の危険性は分かった。でもどうして警察などに検挙されないの？
それは Q の構成員の大半がその辺にいる普通の人々で成り立っているからよ。
普通の人々？
Q は昔の過激派とか都市ゲリラとは違って大々的に存在を主張したりはしないのよ。もちろんどこかのアジトにこもって武力闘争の訓練なんてのもしない。ただ独自のネットワークでコミュニケーターに対する不快感を持つ一般人を探し、少しずつ同志に引き入れていくのよ。
でもテロリストが勧誘なんてしたらすぐ捕まって。
いいえ、奴らは同志を勧誘するときはカムフラージュのため様々な名前を使うの。例えばコミュニケーターとの関わりについて考える会とか、当たり障りないやつね。だからその時点では構成員となる人自身も自分が Q に入ったんだって気づかないらしいの。組織の実態は大半の構成員にさえ分かってない。そもそも Q という組織名すら便宜上の故障に過ぎない。だから警察も捕まえにくいの。
そういうことだったんですか。
That seemed to be the reason why Natsuhiko hadn't even heard the name Q until just a few days ago. Because Q was a unique kind of terrorist organization, one whose very structure was ambiguous.
でも Q の上層部はあくまでテロのために動いているんですよね。
そうよ。上層部は無数にいる下部構成員から実行犯となり得る人物を選んで何年もかけてテロ計画を進めていく。実行犯にはターゲットとなる建物などの関係者が選ばれることも多い。内通者の存在が彼らのテロの成功率を上げているの。その結束力と信念を支えるのは得体の知れない憎悪。自分たちと彼らは違うというだけで他者を憎み排斥し傷つけ、果ては街に火を放てる異形の精神構造。
そんな人間がこの世に存在するのか。
Natsuhiko's very core shuddered to hear the entire story. Not once in his life did he expect there to be people who hated communicators like him to that extent. We've never even met. We've never even done anything wrong. That was when Natsuhiko first knew that the world was full of malice. A peaceful life was not a given, but rather something narrowly established on a precarious balance. As the kids cast their eyes downward at this newfound truth, Anna spoke to them gently.
ごめんなさい。ショックだったでしょ。こういう社会の真の姿や本物の悪意の存在は大人になってから知るべきなのに。だからこの学校ではこんなことは教えないのよ。生徒がいたずらに不安になるし、それはそれで対立の種になるはずだから。この町では報道も規制され、ネットもフィルタリングされている。まあ調べれば Q の存在等を知ることはできるのだけどね。
That did seem like an obvious decision on the school's part. If the school instilled the fear of ordinary people into the minds of all the communicators who attended, then the cycle of antagonism would never end.
でもね、あなたたちなら冷静に受け止められると思ったの。クラス一しっかり者の鳥羽さんと
Dude, you've only known Sal. Okay, with all due respect, Anna, as beautiful and sexy as you are, you've only known Sally for like a fucking 2 days, man. Barely.
デコボコ塗料だけど、だからこそ3人なら
Ugh.
受け止められるはずよね。
もちろんです。
そうですよ。
I'm not gonna lie, I totally spaced out at like half of the fucking shit she was talking about. But I did get the general gist of it.
万が一のことがあっても
Listen, I love Anna, but fuck her. I hate that her character is pretty much like outside of being hot and sexy. She's kind of just there for exposition.
そう話してよかったわ。
Anna smiled sweetly, and then she spoke clearly and distinctly.
ここから先は大人の仕事よ。昨日の爆弾騒ぎの後で保安課や警察の人から話を聞いたわ。テロの可能性については彼らもすでに考えている。この町でテロなんて起きたら十数年かけて作り上げた体制にひびが入りかねないもの。
Too late for that!
厳しい言い方かもしれないけど、子供がちょろちょろしては邪魔になるだけ。きっと保安課の人たちもそう考えてあなたたちを保護しようとしているのよ。
でもだから何もするなって言うんですか？
そうですよ。この町が大変なことになるかもしれないのに、先生なら見過ごせますか？
分かってるわよ。見過ごせはしないわ。これほど綺麗に見える町だもの。守りたくなるわよね。完璧に見えたシステムが本当は穴だらけだったとしても、市民にとっては大事な町だものね。
As she spoke, Anna glanced at the classroom door.
それでも今は帰りなさい、3人とも。そして保安課の人たちが来たら彼らの言う通りにするの。それがあなたたちが今一番すべきことだわ。
Natsuhiko. Whoa! Oh, okay, Mashiro didn't like that. Masahiko felt irritated. He could tell Anna was worried about them both and the city. And yet in the end, her opinion still didn't mesh with theirs. Damn it. We need to persuade her somehow. There has to be something we can do to convince her. As soon as Natsuhiko pondered that question, Mashiro suddenly spoke up.
わかりました。先生、言う通りにします。
Natsuhiko was surprised, but Anna spoke in relief.
ありがとう。聞き分けのいい子たちで先生嬉しいわ。
いえ、私普段から先生のことを尊敬してましたから。それじゃあ夏彦、サリア、行こ
いや、ちょっと待てよマシロ。そんなこと急に言われても。
う。いいから。
At around the time Mashiro said that, she used telepathy.
二人とも何も言わないで。事情はここを出てから説明する。とにかく逃げるよ。
As soon as Natsuhiko heard that message, he couldn't stop himself from raising his voice.
逃げるって何から？
Anna gave a stern expression for a second. Mashiro got flustered and waved her hand.
なんでもありません。ほら行こう。二人とも。了解。
Before Natsuhiko and Sally could understand what was going on, Mashiro led them out. They left Anna alone with a dubious expression on her face.
おいマシロ、逃
Yeah,
げ
what do
る
you
って
mean,
ど
run
ういう
away?
ことだ？
Mashiro shushed them and answered with telepathy.
先生を信じちゃダメ。
Bullshit.
先生、私たちに心開いてない。
Oh!
どういうこと？さっきの話の終わり際、先生が妙に堅くなだったでしょ。だから先生に対してエンパシーが使えるかどうか試してみたんだけど、心の声は全く聞こえなかった。
Mashiro's eyes were blurred with sadness.
そんな。
The smile I saw on Anna's face just now flickered in the back of Natsuhiko's head. It was such a kind smile by appearances, and yet, did Professor Tsubakiyama not actually trust us? He couldn't understand why not, but he could smell danger somewhere.
このままここにいたら保安課を呼ばれちゃうかもしれない。焦らず急いでここから離れよう。
The kids walked down the hallway, trying to look as casual as they could, nimbly passing through surveillance camera dead spots all the while.
では次はどこに行けばいい？まずいね。 浮田のおじさんにも会えないし、もう頼れる大人がいないよ。
Natsuhiko pondered Mashiro's observation, and he noticed that he did have one person in mind.
どうしたの夏彦、何か思いついたの？
いや、一応ほとんど面識ないに等しいけど。
誰？
真白もサリも知ってる人だよ。
It seemed to finally click for Mashiro when he said that.
そう、追い詰められた時はやっぱり
Fucking
いいのを
Jun.
頼るとしよう。
And with that, the kids left the school. As they boarded the taxi, the driver asked them.
次はどちらへ？
消防署まで。
The driver nodded and began to input their next destination. And off we go. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and stop it right there. A little shorter of an episode than I would have liked, but that is the time I have for today, unfortunately. So let's go over what we learned today. So obviously we had our big kind of confrontation moment with our mother. Again, I've already kind of gone over my thoughts and opinions on that, so I'm going to focus on something else about it. She said something about needing to finish a project. So we already knew from the after route that Natsuhiko's mother, in a weird way, she seems to have known what was going on or what was going to happen. At the very least, we can probably safely assume she knows what's going on, what they're doing secretly at Labo. Maybe not necessarily about the terrorist attack or incident or whatever you want to call it, but she most definitely does know about whatever this secret project they're doing at Labo is. So there's obviously something about this project that she mentioned that is making her feel as though she needs to stay away from Natsuhiko, right? Because she's like, oh, I just need to get this project over with, but I should stay away from him for now, right? So there's some reason that she's involved in this project. She feels that she needs to kind of keep her distance from her own child. So that's going to be kind of interesting to try and pick apart. Obviously we have just kind of this city. How trustworthy is the government? Are they really there to protect the communicators, or have they essentially rallied all the communicators here in an effort to just be to just get them away from everybody else, right? Think about it almost as not exactly, but like a camp of sorts. So if you wanted to equate it to like concentration camps used in Nazi Germany, if you wanted to equate it to the camps used in World War II by the Americans for the Japanese in America, Japanese Americans. If you want to equate it to any such similar thing, where a grouping of a certain kind of people is gathered into one area, specifically for the purpose of keeping them away from everybody else. The Native Americans, right? Same kind of deal. Like, hey, here's your land. Stay in your land. Don't go out of the land. Unless you want to assimilate, kind of thing. So I'm kind of thinking that that's where this is going. The cities aren't while the cities are probably going to be a place for research on BC and to further this the understanding of BC, I think that in large part it's primarily to get them away from everybody else. Not necessarily as like a bad thing, but I think it's like they said, to kind of maintain the societal status quo, right? We don't need, we've seen what happens when we don't intervene and when we kind of let bygones be bygones and people kind of run amok. But if we create a controlled environment specifically for these people in which we can directly monitor them and monitor the people coming in and out of the city, that creates a lot more of a stable situation both inside the city and outside it, right? It kind of shifts the antagonism of BC users away from, oh, they're these impure souls and yada yada yada, to, oh, I don't like them because they're favored by the government and they get tax breaks, that's something that's a lot easier to kind of brush off or roll off your back. So there's that. There's also this whole thing with now Anna that we've kind of ran into, saying that she's not trustworthy. Now, there was a moment in the after route where, as Watase, we had come across Anna talking to, I believe, Salyu. They were kind of having something of an argument with each other. And I'm pretty sure Salyu did say to Anna, like, we don't trust you. Like, you can't be trusted. So that what we just saw here puts a lot more context into that scene. Basically to say that there's something more with Anna. I think I'm of the opinion with Anna that she does genuinely care for her students. She does care for all of them, but I don't necessarily, but obviously it's like, oh, but she didn't open her heart up to them. And I think that's maybe because she's a lot more aware of kind of what's going on and maybe the potential danger or elevation of or escalation of what's going to happen or what could happen. I think that's primarily what it is. I don't necessarily think that it's because she's untrustworthy or because anything like that. I do think that it's maybe just like the reason why her heart isn't open to them is because of like what Natsuhiko said. He said, despite us both have, caring for the same people and things and generally holding the same opinion about them, why are we not clicking? And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. They hold the same general opinions about these things, but I think with what Anna knows as an educator and kind of having studied the history of BC, and also just in general being an adult, I think she views this completely differently than the kids. I think that's why her heart was quote unquote closed off. It's because it's like, why would her heart be open when in her view it's like, hey, these kids are putting themselves in such unnecessary danger. They're, kind of getting in the way of the government doing what needs to get done. And they're kind of playing into this fantasy of, saving the city, right? Like, as much as I care about them and as much as I want them to be safe, I just can't abide by that. I can't support that. And so therefore her heart is quote unquote closed off. I think that's what it is, and I think obviously in a situation like this where it's kind of tense and where she doesn't know that Mashiro can use empathy, obviously they're like Natsuhiko and his group are gonna take it as, oh, she can't be trusted. She doesn't trust us, so there's something else going on. She's not on our side. While for Anna, I think it's more a thing of like, I can't condone what they're doing. I don't want them involved. I don't like that they're getting themselves involved. I can't support that. So, very interesting kind of things going on here. And obviously, I imagine next episode is when we'll probably wrap this last bit up and kind of either I'm thinking either that's going to be the closeout of Route B and we'll jump into the other routes, or it'll kind of focus back in on Natsuhiko and his group up to the point of whenever he gets, whenever Mashiro gets separated, Sali gets separated, Yuri gets separated, and Natsuhiko gets separated and injured and yada, yada, yada. But that's all going to be stuff for us to discover next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video and tell me in the comment section below what you'd like to see me play next. If you had enjoyed this video or any other videos or series on my channel, then I highly recommend that you hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications to be notified when one of those videos comes out. Anyways, that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.